be done and an incredible opportunity to dramatically influence the future for the better by engaging in research in this area. So let me get a lot more specific about what we're doing here at NC State University, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the future. So first things first, what is the NC State Coastal Resilience and Sustainability Initiative? Well, as you're staring at these two pictures on your screen, one of a pretty place on the North Carolina Barrier Island coast and another of Hurricane Florence bearing down on North Carolina, this initiative really grew out of the fact that North Carolina is experiencing perhaps more impactful hurricanes, or as many impactful hurricanes as any other place other than perhaps Louisiana and the northern coast of Texas, which have been hammered as well. But in the 2016, 17, 18, 19, we had just been impacted by Hurricane Matthew, followed by Hurricane Florence. And it was quite clear that the climate was changing along the coast and that there was a lot to be done to help North Carolina adapt to a different kind of a future. And that's really where this initiative was born, and sort of watching what happened after Hurricane Florence and talking about how NC State could step up to try and address that very different future. Okay, let me see. There we go. So, you know, the climate change is a reality that we're all understanding a little bit more and more, and feeling the urgency of the need to do something about it. I would dare say that the world is currently unprepared for the challenges of climate change. We know that there are huge challenges in understanding what's going on and figuring out what we can do about it. And that includes figuring out how we motivate society and policymakers to help drive the kinds of changes we need to adapt and mitigate the impacts of climate change. Coastal North Carolina, I believe, is at the epicenter of this challenge for a lot of reasons. I'll show you in a minute, I hope. And North Carolina State University, as a premier land-grant institution, and for those students there, what it means to say we are a premier land-grant institution is that we are an institution that's dedicated to, as our mantra says, thinking and doing, taking our research and communicating it to the user community, and that as a premier institution in that space, bringing our research to bear on critically needed solutions, we should lead in finding some of the solutions that are so urgently needed. So the provost and I began discussions in the fall of 2019 about what NC State could potentially do to address this challenge, and quickly recognized that there was expertise across the entire campus that could be brought to bear, that this is not a challenge that any one department, any one academic program, any one college holds in their hand, because the solutions must be multidisciplinary. They must include people from all different kinds of backgrounds who come together to address the challenges. So we talked about, you know, how can we highlight that to the campus and build a coalition, if you will, of people from across the whole campus. So in the late fall of 2019, the provost issued a charge to me, and with me, we collected a leadership team from, including faculty members from all the colleges on campus, and charged us with building a vision and trying to figure out what NC State could do to address the challenges of climate change in coastal North Carolina. And the first thing that we did as a leadership team, we got together first right before the pandemic hit. So that timing is important to keep in mind, because we've definitely had some challenges in growing this initiative as we kicked off in the winter of 2020, in the couple of months before the pandemic sent us all home in March of 2020. But our leadership team clicked early on and developed a vision for what was needed. And that vision you'll see here on the screen now, to build multidisciplinary teams to address the pressing societal and ecological challenges facing coastal ecosystems and communities, putting a real premium on actionable solutions that inform the choices in front of us and will lead to a more sustainable future for people and for the natural systems that we all depend upon so very, very much. It is an initiative that has coastal in its name. And those of you who are marine scientists may think, well, that's the outer coast, that's the edge where the sea meets the land, and the coastal ocean. Well, actually, it's more than that. I know all of you on this call know where North Carolina is. I stole this slide from another presentation, but if you look at a sort of geographic map of North Carolina, you can see the very, very broad coastal plain of North Carolina, all of this green area here leading down to the coast. And when we say coastal North Carolina, that includes all of that coastal plain, because that coastal plain is key to understanding what's happening here right along the coast. We have a very unique barrier island coastline. If we toggle back and forth a little bit between these two slides, you can see our barrier islands with the very large sounds, which is pretty unique on the East Coast of the United States, actually pretty unique anywhere. So we've got this fragile fringe of barrier islands, or restless set of sand formations here along the coast of North Carolina that are influenced both from the sea and from the land, and in particular from these large watersheds, river systems and their associated watersheds that drain down to the coastline. Our coast is a little bit unique if you think about other states along the East Coast, in that we don't have densely populated urban areas like Miami, like New York, like the New Jersey shoreline, like the densely populated areas in the Chesapeake Bay. We have a few densely populated urban areas. So if you think about the Wilmington area, for example, there is a collection of people in Carteret County where some of you are right now. It's urban to a degree. It's not huge. But we also have more urban areas that support very seasonal tourist economies. Think about the northern barrier islands. Again, I can sneak back, and I'm guessing a lot of you know this. If you think about the northern coast here, there's these communities come alive in the summertime and support a very rich tourist economy. Some of these barrier islands are the national seashore and much more sparsely populated. We have Morehead City area here, we have Wilmington down here, and then vast expanses that are not so densely populated. We have a lot of rural communities in that coastal plain area, and those rural communities exist based on an economy that is largely agricultural. There's a lot of commercial forestry in the coastal plain of North Carolina, and there are many, many natural resource-based economies. I mean, forestry is a natural resource-based economy, depends upon growing, harvesting, and replanting trees, but we're also talking about natural resource-based economies that include the fisheries of North Carolina, that include the natural-based tourism economy of coastal North Carolina, and the like. And if you look at the composition of the communities that are along the coastline, there's a huge range of income and cultural and racial people types, if you will. There are disparities in very short distances between the makeup of some of the communities immediately along the shoreline and those that are more urban and inland across the coastal plain. So our challenge in thinking about coastal resilience and sustainability is large in that we have to consider all these differences in communities, in cultures, and natural ecosystems, in economies, and in the geomorphology and geology of the coastline. So as we were beginning to think about coastal North Carolina and where we should start and where we could bring expertise to bear, we conducted 2 surveys of faculty expertise and interest. And I'm super excited to tell you that faculty from all 10 of our colleges responded to that request and expressed their interest and shared something about their expertise. And if you see, take a look at the pie chart that I've got up on the screen now, you can see the slices for all the different colleges. And although there are some colleges that have more expertise than others, or at least more, self-expressed interest than others. For example, this blue is the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. The green, this green color over here is engineering. College of Sciences, where MEAS is, as you all know, is here. And this other green, and this is natural resources over here. So kind of 4 that have perhaps more than the other colleges, but there's not an insignificant number of faculty members from all the colleges who self-identified as wanting to contribute in this area, and many of them already working in this area. So we really used that survey to take the pulse of what kinds of things we might be able to do in the Coastal Resilience and Sustainability Initiative. We asked people about their interest, about what they were doing right now, about what they thought were the big questions in front of us. And we analyzed that data twice, once with the original respondents to our survey, and then again when we did a second round and grew those numbers to the total I just showed you. And I worked with Casey Bush, a professor in the College of Education, to help me do some cluster analysis of the expertise and how we might identify groups of people who were working together or currently and where faculty expressed interest. And you can see we came up with 3 different cultures. And I just want to point out one thing: the details of this aren't too interesting to dwell on, or aren't worth dwelling on right now, because we're blowing this up as we speak. But our faculty kind of cluster in, you see group 1, communications, economic development, education, engagement, culture, policy, and planning. Our social scientists around the campus. Group 2, modeling, visualization, engineering, infrastructure, and design. Folks with very technical expertise on the campus. NC State is known as a campus that leads in technology development and application. And then a third group of faculty who are working in the realm of climate and environmental change and the ecology of agriculture and forested lands, thinking about water quality and marine and aquatic ecosystems. And I point that out, it's probably not shocking to you to see this, but when we talk about building multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary teams, the goal is to bring together expertise across all 3 of these groups, because virtually every question you can think of in how we might address the challenges of climate change in the coastal zone require both thinking about the community we're working in, thinking about the policy changes that are needed, thinking about the economics of what we might propose, along with modeling and visualization to explore the opportunities in front of us and what we might do, and innovating with our infrastructure and our design, and requiring a deep understanding of our natural systems and how they're changing and how they support us and how we keep them thriving. So we want to mix those 3 areas of expertise as we move forward. That's one of the fundamental challenges that we have in front of us. So we looked at the data that we gathered, the information, things that folks shared with us, and ask ourselves the question in the leadership group, where could NC State lead? Where were the areas where our interest and our expertise were uniquely perhaps poised more than other areas to envision solutions? And, we recognize that there are a lot of people working on urban areas and the immediate shoreline. And so our research perhaps and our identification of potential solutions is further along. There's intense activity focused on the urban areas because the impacts on people are so very dramatic and in needing of immediate work and focus. But solutions for rural areas and the development of rural resilience in natural resource-based economies, agricultural areas, forested areas was perhaps farther behind. And yet the challenges of sea level rise, flooding, saltwater intrusion were equally, I don't know what the word is, challenging and hard ones to deal with. So our expertise and focus in that area could perhaps differentiate NC State. We could become a real leader in that area. Not to say that we would ignore more developed areas, but we could perhaps fill a unique gap where other people aren't working right now. And we also looked around and recognized that across NC State already, there are many who existing groups that are focused on climate change and coastal resilience and could help us in this effort. For example, the North Carolina Climate Office. Many of you are aware that we have a climate office on the NC State Centennial campus who gather data and do climate change projections and exist to help and support faculty in their work in that area. The Southeast Climate Adaptation Science Center, a USGS supported entity, which provides some funding and opportunities to do the very same thing. North Carolina Sea Grant, a great partner along the state. And of course, CMAST, and I'll come back to that, is there as our focal point for coastal work. So recognizing these things, we did some more analysis of how faculty were already connected and how we might build bridges across the natural sciences, social sciences, and technology and engineering disciplines. And the spider diagram is not really meant to be seen. I know it's too small, but you can see faculty names, last names, if you look really closely, and you can see some areas that we first focused on in blue and how many connections they might have. We didn't ultimately find those spider diagrams to be terribly useful, but we did look at that, and we analyzed the big ideas that our faculty submitted in both rounds of our survey. This spider diagram is based on the first round. Because we didn't know quite what to do with that, we didn't repeat that analysis in our second round, but we did summarize our faculty input. And really, as responding to the provost charge as well, no one place can do everything, although we do have tremendous expertise across the campus, as I'll show you in a minute. But we tried to say, where could we work together in these broadly interdisciplinary themes, or broadly interdisciplinary area, and we came up with 6 thematic areas. And what I'd like to do next, and spend just a little bit of time talking about, is what those themes are. Each of these themes are pretty broad. Again, you're summarizing the work of now about 240 faculty members. Of course, it's going to be broad. We have lots of interests, but how can we pull these together in some areas where we can again start to build teams? And the first theme we identified was challenges and opportunities in sustainable agriculture, forestry, and rural and natural resource-based economies. So you have some pictures there to show you a little bit of what we're thinking about. Understanding and adapting to climate change, things like changing temperature and precipitation patterns, increases in severe storms, subsidence, saltwater intrusion, increased pattern of both drought and too much water, poses real challenges to those who make their living on the land. So on your left, you see a picture of an agricultural field that's underwater after one of our storms. So flooding, saltwater and plant productivity are not necessarily a good mix. We also have a lot of animal agriculture in the coastal zone, and those animal our swine agriculture in particular and poultry agriculture produces a tremendous amount of waste that we put on the land. So how do we perhaps manage that a little bit different based on what we think is happening with the climate? How do we maintain our irrigation systems, soil health? And then how do we look at the downstream impacts of things like swine agriculture? There are ways that we might be able to use our agriculture and forested lands proactively to store floodwaters after storms and keep them away from the places where people live temporarily, and then release them in a more slower and more moderated fashion. That's an area of interest. How can we do agriculture differently in the future? But I want to also talk about the prettiest picture on the lower right-hand side, our fisheries economy, and how do we strengthen our fisheries economy, both our wild-caught fishing industries and aquaculture in the coastal zone. That's a growing sector of North Carolina's agricultural portfolio, and one we really hope to also help thrive as we go into the future. So tremendous challenges and opportunities in that arena. Kind of related to, but something we could think about a little bit separately is the whole notion of what's happening to water quality and quantity in the coastal zone. So just pointing out the figure on the left first, that's the Outer Banks and no, it's not Albemarle, it's Pamlico Sound there. And what happens in storms when there's a tremendous flush of sediments, nutrients, contaminants, and anything and everything that's in the water down to the coast, initially goes into the sounds and then goes out into the coastal ocean, changes dramatically water quality, its suitability as habitat for living things. How do we think about managing in the face of that? We need to think about how we manage those contaminants, if we can, on the land before they get to the sea, and then understand what happens when they get down to our sounds in the coastal sea. Are there ways that we can innovate in how we deal with competing demands for water in the coastal zone? We have communities that need domestic water, and we have agriculture that needs irrigation water to grow crops and to hold at bay to a limited extent saltwater intrusion. We have challenges associated with wastewater management as sea level is rising, and we have increased flooding. We have opportunities to think about new watershed-wide approaches to managing nutrients. On the right, you'll see a picture I took of a toxic algae bloom. It's kind of pretty, but not. I mean, it's not pretty for the ecosystem. How do we try to limit the occurrences of toxic algae blooms? How do we better manage stormwater in the coastal zone? How do we perhaps recycle water in the coastal zone? And how do we think about some unique contaminants we don't understand very well in the coastal zone, but are having huge implications for food webs and the like, and that's microplastics. And I'll come back to the plastics. In the next section, you see a big picture of plastic waste along the coast. That is not North Carolina, fortunately, but it is a huge problem everywhere. But theme 3 is really kind of a technology associated theme. focused on energy resilience and innovations using technology to address lots of different things. So starting with energy, how can we develop smart and connected energy systems that can better ensure uninterrupted service as we have more and more storms coming through the coast, microgrids instead of huge, big systems, locally distributed networks, maybe alternative sources of energy. We have a growing solar industry along the coast. We have the development of wind energy offshore, but how do we also include animal waste bioenergy and think more about wind, wave, and solar energy systems? We have expertise in all of those areas. And then how can we use other advanced technology in other arenas as well, like advanced robotics and observing applications, self-powered sensors, maybe even autonomous underwater vehicles to understand what's going on, maybe to use them as we develop different offshore energy systems. And can we develop, coming back to those plastics on the right, we've got a huge expertise in chemical engineering here on campus and a lot of energy thinking about bioplastics and replacements for fossil fuel-based plastics, which is much of what we have right now. It actually comes from fossil fuel, as many of you may know. And how do we think more about carbon storage and carbon capture and reduction strategies along the coast and everywhere? Theme 4, how am I doing on time? Oh, I'm doing that well, okay. Theme 4 is coupled human and natural systems. I want to say just right out front that this is our biggest area. This is the area where we have the most faculty with self-expressed interest in collaborating in big multidisciplinary teams. And the idea here is, how do we integrate human and natural systems thinking about climate change? We want to not think about the natural system as separate from people, but we want to bring the two together and work on them as a unified system. And, thinking about coupled human and natural systems is hugely, hugely broad. It includes things like more monitoring, modeling, prediction, visualization, all great tools and data collection to look at scenarios for interventions that we can do along the coast to enhance resilience and sustainability from the local level to the larger level and over the longer term. There's lots of things that we can think about, innovative interventions for flood mitigation and adaptation. We can think about novel engineering and design standards that support communities. And we can think about things like natural infrastructure, natural-based technologies right in the middle. I'm sure Dr. Eggleston is going to talk to you students about natural infrastructure and oysteries as opposed to cement and other approaches to providing some protection along the shorelines and all the multiple benefits that come from that. But here there's also the people component that is deeply, deeply embedded. How do we develop policies that help us think differently about not putting people in conflict with natural systems, but uniting them and working together with both? And if we recognize, as our modeling and future scenarios show, that some areas of the coast are going to perhaps become uninhabitable by people, or at least people in big structures like you see on the right. We can't go get trucks and trailers and move everything out of the way, as you see in that one cool picture on the right. Toes in the sand, okay, maybe we can move them out of the way, but we're not going to be able to move everything out of the way. So how do we think differently about where people can and should live and where people maybe need to move away from a zone where they're going to be impacted continuously with storms and flooding and even sunny day flooding, as it's called. I'm not going to talk more about that because I'll get really behind. But, there are ways that we can put all of this together. We need to understand what communities want. And then we need to explore alternatives that work with nature. And, that doesn't mean we don't do engineering. There are ways to build roads better. There are ways to build bridges better. There are ways to build buildings better. And we need to put all of those together and think of the interaction. So big challenge there, but potentially, but big need there, and huge payoffs if we come up with different ways of doing business. All right, theme 5 next is a focus on mutually beneficial engagement that emphasizes social equity. So, again, all of these things we're talking about impact communities, and communities need to have a say in what's going on. It's fair to say that solutions rarely work, and I've seen this in a lot of different places. Solutions rarely work if someone just helicopters in and says, bingo, here's what you can do. This will solve all your problems. Communities don't like that. And if this potentially proposed solution is at odds with community culture, community values, and the rest, it's not going to be successful. It's only going to fail, and we can't afford to fail. We need to go after things that have the greatest likelihood of being successful. And as we think about alternatives, respecting the differences in communities that we have along the shore and across the coastal plain, we better understand those local cultures and listen to what people say. We also can emphasize, the title, I'm reading my title there, emphasize social equity. We can think about social inequities and groups of society that have been disadvantaged, and developing solutions that address those historic biases or other challenges that have disadvantaged sectors of society in the past and present, and help to fix them moving forward. And our social scientists can help a lot in how you do that kind of engagement, how you listen, how you think about economics differently, economic development differently, and come up with solutions that work better. On the left, there's just a diagram from a project I worked on with some folks at UNC Chapel Hill, but talking about bridging the researchers and the stakeholders, the communities in particular, and really listen to what communities want, share knowledge with communities in ways that together researchers and community members can co-design research to answer questions that can be used. Then the results, the data produced, can be used in a collaborative fashion to develop solutions that are going to be more successful and lead to greater coastal resilience. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat. All right, theme 6, we haven't really tackled it yet, but we do know that there's a tremendous need and opportunity for more education around climate change resilience, coastal resilience, and sustainability. If we've done a preliminary survey of courses across the campus, and we know there are courses in all the colleges, many of the departments that address aspects of coastal resilience, climate change resilience, and the like. But we don't have much in the way of programs that span disciplines, that leverage that difference and give students the opportunities to get together from different disciplines. And so a next step for us is to think about undergraduate and graduate programs that can span disciplines, potentially span colleges, and allow students to work together in interdisciplinary teams as part of their education, in the same way that we are trying to stimulate work in the research environment. And then education beyond NC State, we know that climate change and scientific literacy is really, really important to help move forward in terms of policies and some of the changes we need to address climate change. So, there's been a lot of disbelief in climate change amongst those who don't really understand science necessarily. And that's not a disparaging remark. It's just how we are as a society. Everyone doesn't understand all of that stuff. How can we demystify that? How can we bring the public along and help them appreciate what's going on, and then work with experts to think about different kinds of futures? You know, some recent surveys have shown that about 75% of society now believe that climate change is real, but don't know what to do about it, feel very frustrated, think it's an intractable problem. Well, we need to change that. And that part of that is demystifying what we're doing and working more in partnership with communities. And there are also ways that we might support workforce development that helps in solutions to some of these challenges, like offshore wind and some of the rest of that. And then finally, the initiative is really hoping to leverage CMAS more as a resource to support research and education. It can be a focal point for us. I'm from the College of Natural Resources, and we have a working forest, Hoffman Forest, that's in Onslow and Jones County in the coastal plain. Could be used as a research site to explore options for storing flood waters in forests and the impacts on forest productivity and you know, water quality and all the rest associated with that. We're taking some steps in that direction. And we want to be able to connect with other universities as we move forward. And I'm not going to talk a lot more about that right now. But one of the biggest resources that the initiative has right now that you students and everyone can use is our Coastal Resilience and Sustainability Initiative website. You can see the web address on the bottom. This is our landing change, catalyzing change, our work, that's our goal, catalyze change to create a more resilient and sustainable future for coastal communities across North Carolina and around the world. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn the floor over to Amanda, who's going to give you a little tour of our website and the resources that we have available.
Great, thanks, Mary. As Dr. Watzin was mentioning, of course, one of the goals of our initiative is to really help advance the research and communications around coastal resiliency and sustainability and all the themes that Dr. Watzin highlighted. So what we've done with our website is really try to use it as a resource base for different resources that you can use to help with your projects that you would be working on. Most of the things I'm going to share with you are accessible right here from the landing page, but I'll hope that my connection is quick enough that we can skip through a couple of them. So the first thing I want to share with you is our directory, and that really will allow you to connect and meet with others that might have some of the same interests that you have related to our coastal issues. And with this directory, you can search for individual people. The part that Dr. Watzin doesn't even know, which is new, hot off the presses that we've been working on for a few months, is now within our search bar where it says search people. You can find individuals, but you can actually do a word search for any topic that you may be interested in, and that will go in and pull from the individual bio statements and profile statements for each professor or faculty member or professional staff member for keywords that they have under their statements. So that's a nice new addition, and you can actually find topics as well. You can also sort and filter here on the left-hand side by college here at the university. You can also search by areas of expertise. And then, as Dr. Watzin highlighted each of our themes, if you're interested in any of those particular themes, you can select those and find the faculty associated with them. When you choose a faculty member, and I'm going to pick on Dr. Ben Horan, who I believe is on the call today, when you choose that faculty member, if they have updated their link, you'll get their bio statement as well as their short description of interests associated with the initiative. And you can also see their publications as well as any grants that they may have. And both of those are linked to the university system and will pull directly from those. Along with sorting with the themes on the sidebar, you can also select on one of those themes, and it will give you that summary information that Dr. Watzin has shared with us, as well as then immediately showing you the faculty and professional staff that I have self-identified with those themes as well. If you are a faculty member or professional staff at the university, you can also ask to be added to the directory or for me to update your profile. So if you don't yet have a bio statement or an area of interest where that is now searchable, you can click on those links and provide that information to me, and I can update that for you. We do have a lot of other resources, again, with the goal of building teams to address the various themes. One of the areas that we have here are funding opportunities. The first table highlights the recurring funding opportunities, and you'll notice a lot of those are those large projects, multi-year projects, especially NSF and NOAA type grants. And with those, we have made a point to separate them out now by the Coastal Resilience and Sustainability and Initiative themes. So if you have a specific theme interest, you can search and filter by those as well. And each of these fields are able to be filtered or searched. And then we also have our current funding opportunities. So those are ones that may have more imminent deadline dates, and we have those specifically. And these aren't all large funds. There are some smaller grants that are included in these as well. One of our goals, and you can reach out to myself or Dr. Watzin, is to help build teams for some of these funding resources. So if you are interested but aren't sure who might be able to work with you, we're definitely willing and excited to help do that for you. Of interest for both our professionals and students, we are trying to include available positions that may be including post-graduation positions or higher level professional positions, but also some internships, apprenticeships, and other things related to the initiative that we feel may be of interest. There are some presentation opportunities that are there, and then our publications as well as our news links are separated by university work as well as state specific, and then regional, national, and international levels. So you can find those there. And one of the last things I want to point out to you is our events page. So you'll notice that today's presentation is there as well as the upcoming CMAS series. And we have recordings from the initiative's past events. And then we also include other events, especially those at the university, but some beyond as well, that are open and available to students and staff to participate in. And with each of those, you should be able to find links for more information, registration, and I have started including calendar links as well so that you can populate your calendar with those. Again, our goal is to help support you and your work moving forward in the initiative. And hopefully you'll have some time to browse the website more, but you can always reach out to me, especially if you have things to add and include with the website, because we are definitely interested in improving it to serve your needs. And with that, Dave, I'll hand it back over to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We'll get a little round of a virtual round of applause. I guess we can put the clapping emoji in your screen. We do have time for questions. We've got about 5 to 10 minutes for questions, but before we open it up for questions, you can raise your hand and I recognize you, or you can put it in the chat and I'll try to check the chat. But also, I just wanted to make 3 comments just to reemphasize a few things from the presentation. One is whether it's within NC State or at other universities, there's a major challenge in trying to put together and kick off large initiatives like this that are spanning so many different colleges and so many different disciplines. And I think that the model that has been illustrated just now in terms of the workflow on how one might go about putting together a fairly complicated and broadly impacting initiative. I think the workflow that was just illustrated is a really strong one. The second one is a point that Mary made, and I'd like to reemphasize that, and that is when working on these projects, it's absolutely critical to engage with stakeholders during the development of a project as well as the start of a project, and especially when we're dealing with issues of coastal resilience and sustainability. And then the last point, kudos in terms of the website. I think it's just a game changer in terms of the ability to communicate. I know when I first came to NC State and for many years afterwards, the biggest challenge in terms of trying to put together a proposal quite often is finding out who on campus does what to then communicate with and develop that proposal. And that took a significant amount of time. And so I just am so impressed with the website and the resources that it provides, as well as, again, just facilitating communication. So with that, I'm going to be quiet and just open it up for questions.
Well, while you're thinking of questions, I'll just add on to the directory comments to say that one of the roles I play, and Amanda as well, is I describe it as being a concierge of research team development. So you can now go into the directory yourself. When we started, that wasn't possible, and explore to your heart's content. But I've gotten to know people all over the campus. Amanda is learning more and more every day. If you have a particular interest in project development or are looking for partners, I'm happy to chat and to make suggestions to you as well, or to share what I know about other things that may be going on in that same space. So please feel free to reach out to us if we can help you.
And from the student perspective, I'll add to that, as you're looking through your course choices or career options, as I mentioned in that search bar. So I work in wetlands, and you can type in wetlands, and myself and a couple other faculty members will pop up. So as you're considering interest in areas of pursuits, that's another avenue you can use to find faculty members across, CMAST as well as main campus. To find those connections.
Mary, I might start us off, just to ask a question. The overarching question we're trying to address in each of these seminars is what is the future of research and communications in the space of coastal resilience and sustainability? So I was just wondering if there were any kind of overarching comments or reactions to that big question.
Yeah, I did. I was watching the time. I didn't want to talk so long that Amanda didn't get to demo our fantastic site. But, I think the opportunities are just phenomenal right now. I watched the national scene. We're having trouble with our budgets in Congress, getting them approved. But there's lots and lots of money flowing in many different ways to address climate change and develop coastal resilience and sustainability strategies. So, if you're an existing researcher, I see a lot of students on the call, you're a student interested in a career in this way, the money is gonna be there. The urgency is really there as well to address climate change. I mean, it is the challenge of our time to come up with solutions to the challenge of climate change. And it is nowhere more acute than along the coastal zone. That's not to say that the challenge isn't there in the mountains of the West that are burning as their climates change and that kind of thing, but there is tremendous need and lots and lots of funding becoming available to do research in this area, and communities and user groups that are just urgently looking for help and thinking about a different kind of a future. So I would say, you want to change the world, here's a place you can do it. I mean, in spades, if you take a deep dive and really work on it.
Thanks, Mary. And just to catch you all up on some of the chat. So Julie writes, I love the funding page. Thank you. Karen writes, the website is very well done. It is a great resource. And then Mary, I've got another challenging question for you from Jethro Senganzi. And the question is, at what point in time do you think the networking across departments will yield a maximized amount of impact in the coastal space?
Wow, that's a
right,
big question. Well, what I would say is we're not quite there yet. A lot of faculty are reaching across departments and doing work that engages colleagues in other departments. But you know, academia is an institution with a long history of work within disciplines, and less of a track record of work across disciplines, with some exceptions to date. But what I would say is we are changing fast. NC State has put a lot into developing interdisciplinary research opportunities. The Provost Office has funded the Cluster Hire program and is putting support to these initiatives and academies. And the rest of the world is, and there's nothing like dollar signs to drive that change. And so the availability of research funding and the number of requests for technical assistance and help are growing. So I don't think it's going to be too far into the future where we'll be doing more interdisciplinary work. And I would challenge you to think about, how do we expedite that? Everything doesn't have to be interdisciplinary, but it can't be. I mean, we do need the deep dive, and some of the, you know, you just need to work with a focus on a particular problem. But the more we can step into this realm of linking things together and, you know, seeing the cross-fertilization and greater impactfulness that comes from that, the better we'll be.
Well, and Dave, if I can add a couple things to that, just this past week, Provost Arden's newsletter had the large article on the campus's focus on interdisciplinary work. So as Dr. Watzin was mentioning, there's definitely that focus and push on campus. And one area I've seen that personally is in the energy sector. And so NC State and the Clean Energy Technology Center has been partnering with folks at ECU and looking and having discussions around, you know, other energy possibilities. And in those conversations are really including the natural scientists, the waste managers, as well as, you know, energy technology, grid availability. So they are starting to pull in a lot of voices into those conversations on projects as we speak.
Great, thank you. And Jethro, great question. I guess the only thing I would add is it just goes back to, you know, communications and actually the social sciences. And I think one key is just understanding the belief networks of a lot of these communities that we're going to try to enhance in terms of coastal resilience and sustainability. You know, what are their challenges? What are their thoughts on the solutions? And what's the common language that we can identify for that sort of two-way communication on what their problems are and then the potential solutions. And so I think that the kind of the social science aspect is key to driving how quickly we'll see an impact of the application of a lot of the knowledge and tools that come out of this initiative in the coastal zone. So great question. I think we have time, we're out of time actually. So again, I'd like to thank our speakers.